proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. Great to be here today with Mark Callander. How are you, Mark?
Great, thanks for having me.
Now, things have changed since last time we sat down for a podcast. You're formerly Chief Executive at Vocus New Zealand. Now it's a somewhat larger entity, 2degrees. Everything's kind of come together.
Yeah, it's again very exciting from my perspective. Again, something I've been passionate about for a very long time. As you know, I've been in this industry for 20 odd years. The lure of 2degrees has been there for a long time. It's always been a business I've admired from afar, like many of the businesses we've bought over the years. So it's fantastic to be sitting here as the new chief executive of 2degrees and the opportunities ahead. So yeah, really excited to be here. So look forward to having a chat.
Well, congratulations on closing that deal. Are there any? There's probably a whole lot of stats and numbers and things, but what does that combined merged entity look like now in terms of scale? What are we talking about?
Big. So it's positive. So in terms of revenue, so we're about 1.2 billion in turnover, which is just a big number. The more impressive number when you start talking about our staff numbers. So we've got about 1,800 staff combined. If I'd told you 10 years ago or 20 years ago I'd be sitting here with a combined workforce of 1,800 staff, I would have told you we're dreaming. But here we are. The really exciting thing about the business, though, is really the assets it owns. So it's phenomenal mobile infrastructure that we've purchased through the acquisition, the fibre assets we own, and the staff we've acquired through the process. So all of a sudden I've got 60 retail stores. Didn't think I'd be sitting here with 60 retail stores either. So the combined business is just a very unique position, given not many challengers have the assets we own to go head to head against the incumbents in the market, and it's that DNA and that passion and that challenger drive that's still burning a big hole in my belly today, and is what I'm looking forward to in the years ahead.
So you very much still see the business as a challenger brand?
Very much so. Challenger is one of the key words I've used over the last few weeks as I've spoken to staff and gone around the country and visited retail stores. It was nearly a dirty word, challenger, but to me it sums up the business, right? If we're not a challenger, we don't, what is our purpose in life? We've challenged every market we've gone into, be that telecommunications, fixed mobile, energy, launched into insurance. So anything we look at, we take a challenger lens to it. And to me, people choose us because we're a challenger. So they don't choose us because we're a smaller version of Spark or a smaller version of Vodafone. We have to carve out our niche in the market. So I love the word challenger. I mention it every second word when I speak to my staff. And it's something to be incredibly proud of. And it is the essence of the businesses we own today.
Yeah. Oh, great. Now, if we sort of go back a little bit in time, when did you get into this? When did you first get involved in the world of telecommunications, Mark?
So actually, like all good lieutenants, started at Telecom. So in the late 90s, when dial-up was all the rage. So my first job was actually working at Extra, which was obviously the internet division of Telecom at the time. So I had about 4 years at Telecom, and to be honest, I actually loved my time there. So I loved the people, loved the staff I worked with, loved the culture, and got frustrated by a lot of the challenges or incumbency that comes with a very large company. So always, my grassroots in my career was in challenger businesses prior to that, and I knew I had to step out and work in a very large business, which I did with Telecom, to just learn, become a better person, better leader, understand how big, large corporates worked, and reinforce that I love being a challenger. So it was a great 4 years, and from there I actually went off and set up my own marketing and brand company, and ironically enough picked up Slingshot as a client. So that was my first foray back into kind of challenger telco businesses. And like I say, that was nearly 20 years ago now, and we had 35 staff when I started, and here we are today, 2degrees with 1,800 staff. So you've been in the industry for 20 years, loved it. I think my biggest reflection on the industry today, and you've been in the industry a long time and technology for a long time, is telecommunication companies are actually incredibly valued. We're not dumb pipes anymore. We're critical to society. We're critical to cloud enablement, how people run their lives, how people run their businesses. So it's been quite nice to have been in there so long to see how exciting we were. The dumb pipes came along, and then again how exciting we are as in terms of enablement companies. So
Yeah, and if you look back to some of those early days, what are some of the things that that sort of stand out in your memory? I think the business in the early days. What it's been called Vocus recently. What was it? What was it called in the earlier days?
Well, if you go back to the essence of where even the business, the nucleus of where the kind of the consumer internet business began. So you go back 20 years, we're a company called Call Plus, and we're a toll bypass company focused on the business market. And then this thing called dial-up internet came along, and we set up a company at the time called i4Free, which was there were a few free ISPs that came into the market.
It's quite a fascinating story, i4Free. Maybe you can just sort of break that down, because there's probably a bit of history that some people will remember, and other people will have no idea that such a thing could exist.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most illegal cases have subsided now, so we'll be fine to talk about it. But essentially, the way the interconnect regime worked many moons ago was you used to have to pay for a call to go one way or another. The fascinating thing with dial-up internet, it was a one-way call. So disruptors in the market at the time obviously jumped on the fact that a dial-up call used an outbound dial-up tone one way, of which you got paid interconnect revenue. So across New Zealand and the world, these things called free ISPs came up, where they were free to the extent that the businesses survived on the interconnect revenue that came the other way.
Right, so somebody calls in from, say, maybe they're a customer of Telecom, calling from Telecom to your network. Telecom has to pay your end X cents a minute for that call. So if somebody spends all day on the internet, then
good for us.
Basically, you're just earning money. So
yes. So obviously, plenty of other investments, but that was the essence of it. So So again, there was at the time there was i4Free, there was Freenet, there were a few others. I think Telstra Clears was Freenet at the time. So this phenomenal thing called free internet came up at the time, and at the time, to be clear, I was working at Telecom at the time, so I was actually on the other side of the fence, charging people $39.95 a month for dial-up internet. But so from there, obviously, this worked very well for the free ISPs in the market, but Telecom at the time obviously wasn't so good for them. So they actually took most of the free ISPs to court, and over the course of kind of a weekend, the free ISPs got shut down through an injunction through Telecom at the time. And then over the weekend, our business was shut down, so we had to come up with a new model, and that new model was a pay ISP model, and that's where we came up with the name Slingshot. And Slingshot derived from David and Goliath, which is we were the David, Telecom was the Goliath, and essentially over a weekend we converted from a free ISP to what many people will be familiar with today as Slingshot, which was a 3-month prepay dial-up service at the time. So that was the nucleus of how the business even evolved to get into the consumer market. And so when you talk around kind of a challenger DNA and really understanding what a challenge, it goes back to those 20 years ago in the trenches at the time, trying to survive, trying to build business models, trying to take on incumbency, and that's the nucleus of the business 20 years ago, and it's still, we have remnants of it today. When I obviously took over the 2degrees business, it was kind of with pride. I got up and I could see people in the crowd that were back there 20 years ago that came up with a name that built the ISP that transferred the model. It was horribly unsuccessful though. We lost most of our customers overnight. So I think at our peak we had about 180,000 free ISP customers. And over a weekend, we kind of dropped back to about 10,000. So it was rebuilding from
that would have been
ground.
Generating some quite significant revenue, having 180,000 customers.
Yeah, it was at that time there was still significant infrastructure that needed to be built. So it might sound big, but it was certainly not profitable. So like any business and any industry outside of telco, scale is critical, and it was really trying to build scale. So from where it went to where it dropped to, we built infrastructure for 170, 180,000 customers. All of a sudden, you've got 10. You've got quite a bit of cost that you're carrying for the balance. So sounds glamorous, but I can assure you it was stressful. It was challenging. It was character building for the people involved. But from my perspective, it's still part of the business we have today. And the 2degrees business has gone through similar things. Similar history with and strong individuals in the market like Tex Edwards that have fought for years to drive true competition and outcomes for mobile and pricing and everything in the market. So both businesses have very, very similar stories, and it's a phenomenal opportunity and privilege to see them kind of come together in the last month or so.
Yeah. So those early days on the 2degrees side, Tex and others, basically managed to launch a mobile network there where there wasn't one to compete with the other players. What are the highlights that you can recall from that time, or what you think were the kind of the linchpins that allowed that to happen?
So again, if you come back and talk about the fundamentals of resilience, individuals like Tex said, when there were others as well. There were no different to Core Plus in the early days. There are great people in these businesses, but the resilience to keep fighting, trying to raise capital, trying to get access to spectrum, trying to drive competition. You do these things for a long period of time with kind of no real reward and outcome. And there were some phenomenal pioneers back in the days of 2degrees that 2degrees launched in 2009 for the first time, but it was going for several years prior to that. So it's it's credit to people like that continue fighting again for fundamental belief in terms of driving true competition in the market, and the business got to 2009 and actually managed to launch. So originally started out with its heritage, which was a consumer prepay business model, which was really hard because again the consumer prepay side of the business is the lower value side of the equation. It required significant obviously building of infrastructure. It required roaming agreements on other people's networks. It wasn't easy, and again, it's with admiration that I saw the 2degrees business grow from its early beginnings of prepay into the very successful businesses today. And it comes back to, I think, unique individuals, unique passion, unique desire, and there's lots of people that are involved in that journey. But they're pretty phenomenal stories when you actually understand where they come from.
Yeah. Now, looking at 2degrees in terms of where they are now as a network and mobile subscribers and so on. What does that look like at this time?
So if at a high level, the industry's about a $5.5 billion industry. So we sit at about 1.2 billion of it. So revenue share, call it 20%, 20% of that market. In terms of customer subscriber numbers, we've got about 1.6 million mobile subscribers. We've got about 350,000 broadband subscribers. So it's a very large business. But the challenge for the business and the mandate that we've got is it's a growth mindset still. So again, the point I'm reinforcing, we're kind of at the start line, and we're just beginning. So we've been incredibly successful businesses in our own right, but I use the terminology victory disease. We're just beginning. So it's how we grow, it's how we forge, it's how we attract talent, and it's how we be different from here. And it's I talk around that challenger DNA all the time. You have to think like that. You've got to have a growth mindset. So the number one thing I want with people coming into our business is a growth mindset. Having spent 4 years or so at Telecom or Spark at the time, the real interesting difference is back then it was around how you prevented yourself going backwards, or alternatively, how do you keep putting up prices so you don't go backwards, right? It's a completely different mindset when you're a challenger business that's grown organically or through acquisition, as we've done over the years as well. You have to think differently because you have to grow each month. Right? You have to worry about cash coming in the door. You have to worry about all of those things, and that's the exciting part. Is these highs and lows, and that's really what I think bonds teams and challenger businesses.
So how do you do that now? Because when you're able to grow by acquisition, right, there was sort of these varying options to grow. There's not really you don't really have a whole big list left, I imagine, of acquisition targets at this time, and looks to me like a reasonably sort of competitive market. You've got Spark sitting there. They've got their cheeky skinny brand there to try and
keep us at bay.
Try and hold you back there. Vodafone, is very well established. I think I remember joining their network when it was at Bell South when it launched, and maybe one of the first 100 or so customers. Incredible customer service that they delivered at that time, because there basically wasn't really a mobile network to support it, so you'd be diverting your mobile calls off to landlines and things like that. So we've had a really, really interesting journey over the over the years. But where do you go from here to to be able to grow in this market?
Yeah, so good question. And again, I think the challenge I have to my team is, again, I use the terminology, we can't be a mini Spark or we can't be a mini Vodafone. That thinking is not what we need in the business. We need to continue to evolve and be different. And as you say, the acquisition opportunities are less and less as you get bigger and bigger. My big challenge to the business is you can be big but think small, right? And that's the key aspect we have. We have to maintain that agility to be different to the incumbents in market. When we look at share growth and opportunity growth from here, the market has got tougher, but that also leans into our favour in that the opportunity to lead and differentiate is still through innovation, and that comes in many forms. So if I use simple examples like the 2degrees business has this fantastic thing called a data clock, which is unlimited data usage, 1 hour every day for every customer's on a certain plan. That's a phenomenal innovation. So you can literally jump up in the morning, or you can have a kid on a school bus that goes, actually, I want my unlimited data between 3 and 4 p.m. or 7 or 8 p.m. So that's an amazing innovation that differentiates us from competitors. But the other key point is it comes back to the services layer now. So where I talk a lot about network and infrastructure, but when I talk to my company, I talk to our company as if we're a software company, because fundamentally people don't buy networks, they consume services. So when we build an app or a self-service application, we don't try and compare ourselves to a Spark or a Vodafone. We compare ourselves to a Netflix or an Uber in terms of how they might want to consume services. And that's how we'll differentiate and win. Right, so it's at the services layer, it's at the digital experience layer, and that's right through the value stack. So when I say those things, I don't talk just specifically around a consumer. I talk around medium enterprise, large enterprise, government. There is no reason that a large enterprise customer today can't go through a software portal to consume and configure data networks, be that SD-WAN or Ethernet services or access to Azure. Right, that should all be done through software platforms. So our ability to grow is, interestingly enough, going to come through services innovation and digital innovation. And we've got the backdrop of obviously being a challenger. We own value and price in the market, right? That's what we are as a challenger. The key to how we're going to win more share is through our services layer, and that's where we're really pushing the team to kind of innovate and drive.
How hard do you see that being? Because as you've got, you're bringing together multiple brands, but effectively, two companies, and I think we've chatted about this a little bit before, but sometimes when we've seen other brands come together, make acquisitions in the market, that's been a pretty challenging process. And I know Vodafone's been, we've probably talked about them on the podcast in years gone by, where they've acquired iHug and Telstra Clear and so on. You brought these brands together, or they brought the brands together, but the technology integration behind the scenes was years in the making to actually get across the line. How hard is that looking for for your team to sort of pull things together? Obviously, you've got some background with over the years of acquiring companies and pulling these things together. How hard is this one looking from the technical perspective?
Absolutely. So first, I'd say again, I actually have a lot of respect for our competitors, and that they've been Spark and Vodafone. And what I like about strong competitors is it does push and drive us to be better as an organisation. You'll be aware we have a very large wholesale business, and we're actually a very motivated wholesale business. So we've got some great wholesale customers, great large wholesale customers on our network, and I often get challenged by various people as to why we would do that. And my response is fairly simple in that we are pro-competition. We always have been. We've been pro-competition for 20 years. Competition is good because it drives innovation. So if I'm enabling wholesale customers in the market, it's going to make my retail business stand up on its own merits and innovate and drive and succeed as well. So that's a really, really important point. In terms of the integration, first and foremost, we've done lots of them. So, the 20 odd years I've been there, we've probably done 20 meaningful ones, and I can throw off Whoosh Wireless to Stuff Fibre to Orcon to Switch Utilities, which was an energy company. And I get asked this question all the time. It's like, how are you going to do it? And why are you not having sleepless nights about it? Yeah. Firstly, got a great team around us. But secondly, it's actually a process. It's a repeatable process, and it takes discipline. It takes, you've got to understand the burden of technical debt in your business. You've got to prioritize integration above other initiatives in your business. So not making it sound easy, but over the years, we've done some bad and we've done some very good. And the successful ones we've done at pace. We understand our end destinations early. We bring people on the journey with us. We clearly communicate why we're going in a certain direction. But it's discipline, and it's too easy to get distracted by big, new, and shiny versus integration. And the one thing we've always done very well is we've carved out resource, we've prioritized integration, we've prioritized customer, because the key thing people forget in integration is customer. Right? It's not the technology stacks that struggle; it's your customers that struggle. So you've got every incentive to get it right. So I can't speak on, again, behalf of others. All I can say is the ones we've done well, we've got a formula now. I've got a head of integration, a guy called Adrian Dick, working for me. I've worked with Adrian for 20 years, and we work incredibly well together. But again, the experience we've learned over the years, we're just going to rinse and repeat. And I don't want to jinx myself too early, but things are going well, and we're communicating well with the team, and we've got good progress, and we're focused. We've got a clear plan. We're sharing that plan. Again, we just get that balance right between what does the business need and what does integration mean and what does it mean for customers. And you get those three things right, touch wood, we'll get this one right as well. So we're feeling a little bit confident, but we'll see how we go.
Cool. Now, I'm really, really curious about your brands, such as Orcon and Slingshot, to talk there as well. The Vocus brand is more on the business side. And I remember being asked, I can't remember which media outlet it was, but someone was asking me, well, what does this future look like with the businesses potentially coming together in the past? And I looked and I thought, well, this is the way that Vocus and Mark seem to run, is there's a bunch of brands.
Yep.
And so I thought, well, that's how it's gonna play out. But you're squishing all of the brands and converging into one. So how did you land on that decision? Can you walk us through a little bit of how you got there and why Orcon will be gone for good and so on?
Another very good and tough question. I think the first thing you learn from that is you've got to put your personal emotive ties aside, right? So I'll bleed Slingshot, I'll bleed Orcon. I've developed those brands. I've been involved in those brands for 20 years. So it's not with a heavy heart that we say we're going to a single brand. But through all those years, we've always challenged ourselves on why we have multi-brand strategy as well, and it's worked very well for us, given our position in the market, our ability to spend on marketing dollars, the ability to have cut through in the markets we compete in. So for us, the multi-brand strategy, given our relative size and relative marketing effectiveness, has always worked. The one really, really exciting thing that has even surprised me more when I've come into the 2degrees business is the 2degrees brand is a loved brand. It is, whether you're speaking to customers or staff, it's a brand that's loved by all. It's a brand that's bigger than the brand. It has a purpose, which is, again, fighting for fair to make New Zealand a better place to live. So every essence of that brand and a challenger brand is phenomenal. And when we've always challenged ourselves on the multi-brand strategy we've run, we've actually looked across the fences with envy to go on, so nice to have a single brand. Because with our multi-brand strategy that we've historically run, is we've actually run different businesses, right? So we've had a Slingshot business and an Orcon business, and we've actually structurally we've run the business separately, and we do it purposefully. And it's something, again, that Malcolm and Annette taught me in the early days, which is if you want a business to be successful, you need to give it its resources, you need to ring fence it, and you need it to control its destiny. And that's what our multi-brand strategy has always allowed us to do. So that's with a lot of emotion I talk about those brands, and we've got this fantastic thing called 2degrees. 2degrees is again a once in a lifetime opportunity to kind of go that next level again. 2 Degrees is a value brand in the market. It's incredibly well known. Its awareness is through the roof. Its consideration is through the roof. So every aspect we look at that brand, and we've looked at it from afar, going, it would be amazing if we could have that brand, and we're now in the position we've got it. So then we need to put our customer hat on and go, well, what are the pros and cons behind keeping the various brands? We haven't quite kicked them to touch yet, but we're going to go through the relevant research that you'd expect to make those final decisions. But the strength of that brand, the opportunity to evolve that brand through consumer to medium business to enterprise to government is the big opportunity. And we think to achieve our simplification of the business and innovation of the business, we can do that more effectively under a single brand structure. So the way I've now aligned my team for success moving forward is under a single brand structure, so we can achieve those objectives. I think we'll, in the longer term, take more share under a single brand strategy than a multi-brand strategy. But I would like to reinforce to all my Slingshot and Auckland customers out there, they're going to get a fantastic service under 2 Degrees. Nothing's going to change. But there are lots of benefits to going to that single brand strategy. So, share of voice, marketing effectiveness. We want to be standing up alongside a Spark, a Vodafone, and 2 Degrees when you see our brand and how much we're spending in market and our awareness and how relevant we are in the market. So a long way of saying, brand's very emotional to me. I've been involved in them from a very long time. But I know fundamentally that the success of the business and the team has done an amazing job on the 2 Degrees brand. Our future is the 2 Degrees brand moving forward. Yeah, we are keeping the 2Talk brand separate for your listeners out there. And you've got a few very strong technology people out there listening today. 2Talk is a phenomenal business. It's run by a lady called Jude Flood. So Jude Flood runs 2Talk. It's a phenomenal business. I was in there at the company last week, because it's quite hard from my perspective. I get up and talk around this phenomenal one company, one brand strategy, and I've got this awesome team that's sitting in another building. But again, my message to Jude and the team is, they're a critical part of the business. They've got a phenomenal IP voice business, phenomenal software stack. They do a great job in key segments of the market. So that is one part of the business we are just going to continue to invest in, but it will operate completely separately.
Yep. So peeling back the covers a little bit, sort of going through that exercise and figuring this out. How long did it take? How many people were involved? What did that look like? Because I just think it's, it's obviously quite a pivotal and key, moment for the businesses. Just kind of curious. So the advantage we have is we kind of do it every year. So again, if you look at our consumer business today, we have Slingshot, Auckland, and Flip. So we've had these three brands. So we challenge us every year whether it's the right strategy or not. And we've had big debates on Flip and whether 2 versus 3, and we'd kind of reached the point 2 was probably the best place to land. And so Flip had a path to being removed from the business anyway. So we challenge ourselves as an executive team every day, and it really comes back to the fact we've envied looking at our competitors with a large single brand to really get behind, back, and drive outcomes. And so it probably wasn't as long as you thought, because we think about it all the time, right? We're constantly challenging ourselves on that multi-brand strategy. We've thought through, do we keep 2 Degrees and a Slingshot as our challenger brand, or a Flip as our challenger? We've gone through that process, but I think all roads lead back to the fact we want to back a single brand, and we want to be a serious challenger in all market segments. We believe the most effective way to achieve that is under a single brand strategy. So I've probably had more sleepless nights than most on it, but and I'll have a marketing and research team out there going, oh, we're still going to research it, which we will do, but I think we'll get to the end destination. The challenge we have, again, because we've got these 2 very successful businesses today, we've got Slingshot that still signs up thousands of customers every month. We've got 2 Degrees that signs up thousands of customers every month. 2 become 1. How do we not lose or cannibalize that opportunity? And that's the big challenge we've got as a business. So we will tread carefully. We'll make sure that it's the right outcome for our customers, and we also want to make sure it's the right outcome for the business, and that we continue to take our unfair share of the market out there. And hopefully we're here in 12 months saying how successful it was. But yeah. So what do you see as the sort of the challenges that you have to face up to go forward? I think if you probably know this better than I do. I hope you do anyway. If you were asking people around where they see 2 degrees, position, I think there'll be a viewpoint of it being more towards the consumer than probably the big business and government and so on. The feedback I guess I hear is that the network has really grown a lot, but it's probably not quite on equal footing in some parts of the country with competitors. How do you work through these things? Where do you go from here to become that sort of player that's I don't know, equal footing? I don't know how you put that.
So first and foremost, I'd say the networks are equal. So I would say they're equal from a coverage perspective, from a quality perspective. There's lots of independent research out there at the moment on the networks. So the one thing I would say is I think that we've got 3 well-invested, high-quality networks in New Zealand. And that's probably reinforced by the fact that you don't see too many people shouting network today, right? I think it's kind of the network equivalence is there, and that's at both a fibre infrastructure layer and also I would speak quite strongly say it's also at the mobile network layer. And having looked at this business, 3 or 4 times over the years, the one thing that has changed over that time has been the investment in the network. So the last 3 years, significant investment in both kind of build out of the network and partnerships to deliver coverage that's on par. So, reducing resilience on roaming and, being able to fully leverage both our network investment and spectrum investment. So first and foremost, I can sit here with complete confidence going, I think our networks have complete equivalence today.
Sounds like I need to get a 2 degree sim again as I'm off around the country.
Absolutely. And we'll take that challenge every day of the week.
Have a look.
I'll have it here by 4 o'clock before you pick up for the day. But the one thing does take a long time to change perception. So there is, if you went back 3 or 4 years ago, there were probably rightfully so some issues with the equivalence of those networks, which have been resolved. So again, the team's done a phenomenal job there. So I'm less concerned about that. So our job as a company now is changing perception, and as you're aware, changing perception is probably the harder part than building out a network, because perception lasts for a very long time. And that's where we've got to embark to take this brand. So if I can sit here today and say our network is, has equivalence to others in the market, the real question then is how do we be more relevant to high value households, medium enterprise, high enterprise, and government? And that, from my perspective, is just a brand issue. All right. So if I can, you would have seen plenty of advertisements out there talking about the $1 billion we've spent on a network. You would have seen our sponsorship of Super Rugby, where we're one of the major sponsors of the Super Rugby team. That is around trying to change perception around the size and scale of the network infrastructure we've got, and that it's comparable. So that's you don't see that in the ads, but that's what it's trying to do. It's trying to go, we're significant, we're equivalent, we're here, consider us. Our job is how we execute that in market. And I use an analogy with my team, which I'm not sure they like or not, but you talk around. I talk around if I think about two planes on a tarmac, and you've got a competitor branded plane and our branded plane. The planes are of similar quality. We've got the same talent, and in terms of the pilots are sitting there. We've both paying to be at Auckland Airport because we've got leases, and we've stood up the same international routes. So we've done all this sort of stuff, and the challenge we have is we passengers pour into our planes. A lot of our passengers turn right, not many turn left. The other planes, they turn right and left, so they're getting that equivalence and that fair share of kind of all markets they play in. Our goal, we've invested, we've got the network, we've got the planes, we've got everything. Our challenge as an organisation is how do we get people to turn left, right? And you do that through marketing, you do that through service, you do that through your brand. So, kind of your earlier questions about the brand kind of all lead back to this point here, which is we're there, we've got the right to play, right? So we just have to tell people now and convince people, and it's really as simple as that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the analogy I use. And perception, it comes back to perception. It takes a long time, but we'll get you 2 degrees sim, and you'll be away laughing.
Okay. Now, talking about service, I think your people have traditionally been here in New Zealand in terms of customer service, right? With both 2degrees and the Vocus business. Is that still the case today in terms of where your customer service people sit, or do you have some offshore? What is that?
So 100% based in New Zealand. So we acquired again Orcon in 2014. I think, and they actually had 100 set contact center in Manila. And again, one of the first things we did when we acquired Orcon is we actually relocated that contact center back home. So 100% New Zealand-based contact center, 100% work from home. So even in a post-COVID world, we've done a lot of work to really put that workforce remote. It's what they want to do. It's the the choice they want to make. We give people the option, but 90% plus of contact center related stuff want to work from home for obvious benefits like more quality time with the family and the kids, less commute. You don't have to pay $10 for a sausage roll in Auckland. All of those sort of things. So yeah, 100% contact center team based.
So you're not Elon.
No, not at all, not yet. We've got to. It is an area that is challenged at the moment. Again, with the lack of immigration coming into the country, you've got things like COVID and a lot of contact center staff associated with that. So a challenge for the industry in New Zealand across the board is really how do we fulfill that resource and pipeline so we continue to deliver great service. And it's something where I think as an industry we're trying to work on. But but moving forward, it's going to be 100% Kiwi based. It comes back to our core values, our core DNA. So we won't offshore.
Okay, I think that's. It's definitely something that stands out, and good on you. Now, another thing that has been going on is selling off of cell towers. So that's something that's being investigated, locally with competitors. How does that sit for 2degrees? Do you see that as something that could be beneficial in the future of the business in terms of freeing up funds and so on, or would you expect it to stay the same?
So the best way to think about it is it was never part of the investment. So again, we've got two great shareholders in Macquarie Asset Management and Aware Super. The desire for the 2degrees and Vocus assets was to buy a growth business that had good growth potential. So the good news is it's not part of the plan. So that's good. So we're focused on executing the plan. It's with interest we watch it. So there's obviously a lot happening in that space. I think the key point on is it's not at the competition layer. So the tower sales are really selling the passive infrastructure, whereas the competition happens at that services layer, the active layer, and kind of everything in between. So it looks interesting. If you look at again, some of the sort of values and multiples they're getting, you kind of see the logic behind it. So we'll watch with interest. Again, I don't think it's. I think either way we're in a strong position. If you go back through the history of competition, this isn't just about mobile networks. It's to have a party that might own infrastructure that wants to welcome more tenants on, it's probably a pretty positive thing. So either way, I think it's 2degrees, and it'll be a very strong position moving forward, regardless of what happens.
Yeah. Okay. So what else is happening? What else should we be looking out for from 2degrees now?
Yeah. So certainly the thing hopefully you won't see is the integration. So the message we're sending is you'll continue to see that the same great service, seamless integration. Silly dumb things like billing errors. Our customers won't know what's going on. So that will define success for us moving forward. We're continuing to roll out our 5G network. So again, a big part of the investment of the last 12 months and certainly the next few years is going to be the continued rollout of our 5G network. So we now have coverage across Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch. So if you're a Samsung and Apple user with the right phone, you're enjoying our phenomenal 5G service. So that's going to be a continued investment that we're going to have to roll out and deploy. So that'll be a big focus for the business. But more importantly, it's how we're going to turn up in those high value market segments. So again, how we turn up in business. You'll see some new campaigns hitting shortly, which is for the first time really having a business focus on how we're turning up in market. I've just told my competitors what's going on, so they might keep an eye out for it. Marketing team will be shaking their heads. But we are. You'll start seeing some early signaling that the challenge for this business is just a perception. We've got the right to play. We've got the right to win. We just need to let customers know that. And so you'll continue to see our strength in the consumer business. That's our bread and butter, right? So you'll continue to see strength there. You'll continue to see the strength of a mobile and fixed player. So I think the other interesting challenge you have is DNAs are different across mobile and fixed companies. And it's how you get the blend of both of those businesses moving forward. So you'll start having conversations with us that are fixed and mobile conversations, not just mobile conversations, and vice versa. The ex-Vocus business, you'll stop having conversations that are just fixed. You'll have having conversations that are fixed and mobile. So that fully integrated company, you'll start seeing, you'll see continued investment in the network, 5G, eSIMs, IoT at some point in the future, which is really exciting. If I could come back in a different life, I'd love to be an IoT man. There's so much cool stuff happening in IoT. But in the meantime, I'm focused on our culture and our people. We've got a big task we talk a lot around technology integration. I'm very, very obsessed with the culture and our people. I'm 4 weeks into the job now. I've spent quite a bit of that time around the country, visiting retail stores, visiting offices, speaking to people. You learn so much. And again, when I talk around that passion for that brand, I use the example I went into the Riccarton Mall, and the team of the Riccarton 2degrees store there are just amazing, right? Their passion for the company and the brand is just amazing. And whenever I drive around with the kids, they're pointing out 2degrees stores everywhere. It's pretty cool stuff, right? So it's how we just continue to embrace that and integrate these businesses as well. And if we're successful, our company, our competitors will start paying attention to us. If not, we'll just stay under the radar, and we'll be a $2 billion company before they know it. So.
Now you mentioned eSIMs there. What can you tell us? What's coming on that front?
Yeah, so obviously eSIMs is a key and emerging part of what's going on across the sector. So it's obviously provides a very seamless way for people to switch between providers. The ability to offer customers an eSIM opportunity across all the players is really, really important to us if you've got the right handset and capability to do it. eSIMs will be part of the future in terms of the way we operate and the way we switch between providers, or whether you have dual providers on a phone as well. So that development's underway, and similar to what others are doing in the market, we'll have that as an option available to our business and consumer customers in the future.
Right. And one of the things that we've only seen one provider do in the New Zealand market is that sort of single number across, say, an iPhone and an Apple Watch. Is that something that's hard to do? I know.
Yeah. So again, to be clear, the eSIM journey is much more than the mobile phone. So it's connected devices and all connected devices, and so short answer, that is hard to do. And that's why you'll see most players go on a roadmap of deployment, starting with, again, mobile devices first, and then going through connected devices thereafter. So, it's hard, but again, I use the word ad nauseum to my team about equivalence. So, we have to be equivalent. We have to offer similar services. So, it is part of being a key player in this connected world we live in, and it'll be a key part of our roadmap moving forward.
Now we've got world-class fibre in New Zealand. We're in a really lucky position, or 87% of homes are with access to fibre. But now you've got a mobile network to sell. What is that going to look like in terms of fixed wireless, particularly with 5G growing from, I guess, something that's it's a pretty small percentage of coverage at the moment, but that's going to grow.
So I love fixed wireless. Now I'm a fixed wireless evangelist. So fixed wireless has a very important role to play in kind of what we deploy out in the market. And if you look at certain usage behaviors in a household or certain budgetary requirements, it has got a really important role, particularly as we're about to enter fairly inflationary times. So again, it's no secret that the fibre input prices that we pay to our local fibre companies, and we're about to get a very significant increase to that. Our only alternative is the only prices we can control are those that are within our remit. So therefore, more cost-effective alternatives will be delivered to fixed wireless access. That's just the reality of the economics we're facing with the local fibre companies. I would go a step further and say that the service is pretty phenomenal as well. So I played a trick recently on my daughter. We've obviously got gig fibre coming into our house, but I told her I was changing out her Wi-Fi access point, and I actually put a 5G connection in the room, and she wouldn't go back to the old connection. So she's getting 400 to 450 meg download to her room at the moment. So the service is phenomenal. The ability to offer that at a price point that might be more appropriate to certain households is going to be really important moving forward. I think New Zealand Inc., like the rest of the world, is going to face some challenges, and I think it's really important you've got a balance or a portfolio of products that you can offer customers. At the end of the day, you've got people where fibre is fit for purpose and it's going to be the only alternative. You've got fixed wireless that's going to play a really critical role, be it from a 5G, which is from a performance standpoint, competitive with 300-400 meg entry-level products in the market. But more importantly, from a price perspective, is it going to meet a need in the next few years? I think it will. So I'm a big fixed wireless broadband player. One of our core pillars is, developing innovative products on our incredible networks. So quite simply, our customers will get the best experience on networks we own, and that'll be a big part of our strategy moving forward.
Interesting. I think there's always sort of how do you market that in a way that, it's that, I guess it's a balance for the business in terms of, from a revenue perspective, you probably prefer as much to be coming over your own network. But actually, it's pretty hard to I think it's probably impossible to beat fibre from a reliability and a performance standpoint at this time, right?
Yep,
So,
and don't disagree. You're never going to force a customer, be a consumer business, down a path for a technology path that doesn't make sense to them. So it comes back to the why. So be that your usage requirements within a home or a budgetary issue versus the demand. So don't disagree with the sentiment that fibre is a phenomenal product. The investment this government's made in fibre was visionary at the time. The quality of the network's amazing. So don't doubt any of those portions. Our role as a challenger is how do we balance that need versus cost pressures that homes are facing, and if you can offer an alternative, great. But you got to be very clear that it's what you're offering and what you're comparing it to. So again, I think as an industry, we've been historically quite poor around promoting products that again, I always put a very customer centric hat on, which is you've got to be very clear on what it is and what it isn't. And in this country, we've still got about 340,000 homes that have still got copper. And as we're going to go through a copper withdrawal process, we're going to ripple that copper out. And we've thrown everything but the kitchen sink at it as a fixed line provider over the years to try and switch those customers. There's some customers that either just don't want, for whatever reasons, they're either the laggards or they don't want the front road, front of their house dug up. They're the sort of people that the fixed wireless broadband might be a perfect alternative for. But again, got to be very clear on what it is and what it isn't. And at the end of the day, we're never going to force a customer down a path that's not what they want, and that's just not where we are as a company.
Yeah. And looking at that rural coverage and the options that are available, obviously sort of satellite's something that's come back into the fore after really many years of it being. I mean, it's only really been a very, very sort of small niche, but it's something that a lot more people are paying attention to.
Yep.
Then obviously there's your rural broadband through fixed wireless or copper. We've got wireless internet service providers.
Yep.
as well. One of the things that I note sometimes when I'm looking at a particular address and looking for what's available in terms of service to that location, it might well be that there's cell sites about, but there's only so much capacity on those. How do you see that playing out? Will there be a portion of customers that will be growing with that interest in satellite, or do you think there's an ability to kind of increase how many customers you can as you move forward with 5G and so on.
Yeah, the balance you have with managing mobile networks is, again, how do you maintain a consistent and quality customer experience? And that's the balance all players face over wireless broadband uptake versus mobile broadband. So clearly there's a usage differential between a mobile user and a fixed user. So that's just a challenge of making sure that the customer experience of the mobile network is not impinged. So that requires investment in spectrum and all of those sort of things. The rural stuff is really interesting. So we're obviously party to RCG. So there's Spark, Vodafone, and 2degrees that are party to RCG. That's actually working incredibly well in terms of kind of the investment that's made and the continued build out of providing services through that RCG group.
Right. So that's basically three competitors working together on rural connectivity.
Correct, and it's again we compete, but it's how do you service those areas to provide them with a quality of service that they would otherwise not get. And I always use the analogy whenever three competitors compete, it's normally for a pretty good reason, which is you're trying to achieve a greater good for a customer outcome, and that's what I think RCG's achieved very well in terms of servicing those more remote rural users. But to your point, there are other competitive alternatives out there. Satellite's a good example. It's been mentioned a couple of times in the media that there are players like Starlink and that have entered the market. And coming back to our pro competition stance, we have some very good partnerships with what we build. Out there again, it's important that WISPs have of reaching the virus and active in all those spaces. So I put my pro competition hat on again. RCG is doing an amazing job. We embrace new technologies like Starlink and satellite, and we enable WISPs to compete. So it's a big challenge that I think everyone needs to lean into. And it's what we're up for. It's what we've been doing for an extended period of time.
Is there anything extra that you could do? I know, between Spark and Vodafone, and I may have been slightly wrong, but something that looking at recently, it looked like with Spark, you get your rural kit, you plug it in to the power at home, sort of as simple as that. Vodafone have an option whereby an installer comes and gives you makes some effort, I guess, at cost to give you that better connection between the cell site and the home location. Any changes happening 2degrees on that side?
So I just think, again, as an industry, we're very aware that it's something that's really important, which is connectivity into the rural sector, the rural community. So and I think initiatives like the extenders and those sort of services, it's how do we do it in a cost-effective manner that's delivering, I use this word equivalence a lot, but a near equivalence outcome for those more challenging places to reach. It's something that, again, we remain committed to. If you look at 5G rollout, again, how do we have the right amount of emphasis on rural and regional New Zealand over Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch? And they're the sort of things that, again, we're very passionate about. We think about a lot, and again, we try and work how we can do it in a cost-effective manner. So, no silver bullet, but we're again, if I just keep coming back to my customer-centric view of the world, we're just as passionate about what's happening in rural and regional New Zealand as we are in kind of the more metro areas.
Great. Oh, it's been really, really interesting catching up, Mark. I know there'll probably be some questions that have come in, because as well as the podcast, we do, we're live streaming this out to
you didn't tell me that.
Out to a few platforms. So it may come back to you with some questions, or maybe it's maybe we need to have a sort of technical session with that side of the business. There might be some other.
There's plenty of people smarter than me in the business.
Other questions
but I actually think it'd be a great idea to get. Again, we've got some amazing technology business, and I think you'd have a fascinating with your viewers and your listeners. So you're more than happy to line up those people as well.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Well, thank you again for your time.
Yeah.
And thanks to our listeners for joining us here on the New Zealand Tech Podcast. Of course, thanks to all the brands that make New Zealand Tech Podcast possible, which includes 2degrees, Vodafone, Spark, HP, Gorilla Technology, and the rest of our supporting partners. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we will look forward to catching you for the next episode.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
Cheers,
Appreciate
Mark.
it. Cheers.
So, see you.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.